Okay, no edits, no raw, no nothing. I'm just going to sit here and talk into my computer. So, I wanted to do a video, or a talking to discussion rather, about everyone knows I'm a car guy, and I think everyone knows that I'm a Ford guy in terms of trucks and for the most part. And I want to do an actual discussion of why. Because I think a lot of people say, oh, I'm a Chevy guy, oh, I'm a Toyota guy, oh, I'm a Ford guy. And then when asked why, they just say, because it's better. Because I've got better engine. Because it's better. Because it looks better. Because it's cheaper. Because it's easier to fix. Well, no. I want to get into actually some of the reasons why I like Ford better. Now, I'm not going to be including Dodge on this list because I think that arguably Dodge has the worst track record and the least following for their trucks. Now, Dodge has made some good products. Back in the 90s, they made some good engines, but the trucks themselves, I think a lot of people will agree, I think a lot of Ford or Chevy people will agree, they're just not that great. And I would tend to agree. I like some Dodge trucks, but I don't think I would buy most of them over a Ford or a Chevy. It depends on what year Chevy, but for the most part, no. I'm not a Dodge guy. And then I do want to specify one thing, and that is in terms of talking about a brand in and of itself, you can't really talk about like General Motors as a whole and Ford as a whole. So instead, I'm just going to be focusing on full-size trucks, F-150, F-Series versus Silverado, because if I go into cars, there's all kinds of stuff. And in my opinion, to be honest with all of you, if you're going to buy a car or a small SUV, just do yourself a favor and get a Toyota. Get a Toyota, get a Honda, get a Mazda, get one of those. Just get a Camry, get a Corolla, get an Accord. If you're going to buy a sedan, get a Civic, a RAV4, a CRV. Don't buy a Malibu, a Cruise, a newer Focus, a Fusion. Not that all of those are bad, but if you just want no bullshit, just get a Toyota. Some of the older Ford Fusions were good. Some of the older GM vehicles, in my opinion, were okay. But if you really just want reliable, just get a Toyota. It's that simple. Or a Honda. Not saying all Toyotas are good or that all Fords are bad, but whatever. So, I'm going to talk about trucks. So, I'm going to start with the oldest body style truck that I have good experience with is the 88 to 98 Chevys and the 80... I can't remember. The 83 or 84 up to 96 Fords. And so let me just go over a few things. So the 88 to 98 GM trucks are not bad trucks. That said, there's a couple things about them that I would point to Ford. Number one, in my opinion, I think the Fords just look better. I think it's that simple. I think Ford, for the most part, has always made a better looking truck. Again, these are my opinions, not facts. The headlights, the grills, I just think they look better. They just look cleaner. They're just nicer. Okay. Next thing that I want to discuss, and this is something that GM has done for a while, but it's really prevalent in the 88 to 98 trucks, is the dashboard. So the GM trucks, the dashboard that they use is very square, which is fine, but the thing I don't like about them, especially up till about 92 in the older ones, is they are two-level dashboards, meaning when you look inside from the driver's seat, there's like a lower part of the dashboard, and then there's a big square that's like half a triangle shape that just sticks up out of nowhere. I don't like that. Ford didn't do that, and I don't like that. In terms of other stuff, Ford made really good engines, and so did GM. I think that Ford has the slight edge for things like rust, because GMs like to rust. Not that Fords don't. But my main thing for the older trucks, they look better and they have a better layout dashboard-wise. I absolutely despise the gauge cluster on the old GM trucks. I think it's the stupidest thing ever, the stupid moon thing. I don't like the fact that the GM trucks have two radios, one on the right and one on the left for the AM and the FM versus the tuner. I think that's dumb. I don't like the climate control placement. I don't like the squared-off random cut-in from the side. So that's enough about the dashboard. Now I'm going to talk about the 97 to 03 F-150, the Jelly Bean, the 10th gen, and the, not the Cat Eye, but the 99 to 07 Silverado, because those are the closest competitors. So Ford did the Jelly Bean style in 97 because Dodge came out with the second gen in 94, and arguably the second gen Dodge changed the truck world. It was the first truck that brought us into the modern world of trucks. Trucks would not be how they are today if it wasn't for the second gen Dodge. They did it first. So Ford, of course, was like, oh crap, we need to modernize our truck to get with that. So they took the F-150 and made it all round, made it sleek, gave it all bubbly, made it cool looking, lowered it, made it smaller, and that's how you got the 97. And then GM said, well, crap, Ford's still stealing all the sales. We need to catch up to them. So they, in 99, redesigned their trucks to the GMT 800 platform. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the 10th generation F-150 is the best truck in the world, because it's not. That said, I think that the 10th gen F-150 is a good truck. I would not hesitate to buy one. Obviously, it does have some issues. If you get the 5.4, you have issues with the spark plugs shooting out and the manifold tick, which is common for Dodges too. GMs do it sometimes even too. The transmissions, they were fine. They were not special. They weren't good. They weren't bad. They look, in my opinion, the 97 to 03 F-150 is better looking than the 03 to 07 Silverado. In my opinion, the cat eye design that GM used on those, the Trailblazer, some of the smaller SUVs, I think it is the ugliest, stupidest front end design to ever exist. The Equinox had it. It looks awful. The double headlights, it's terrible looking. Ford kept it simple with just the straight grille, the straight headlights. The 99 to 02 Chevy trucks and GMC kept the same front end. I think that those look much better. I don't love them, but I think that that front end is nicer looking. I still think Ford looks more aesthetically pleasing. It's just rounder and sleeker than the 99 to 07 trucks, because just in my opinion, I don't like the way the 99 to 07 GM trucks look. They're just weird. They're like not quite proportional. It looks like they took the GMT 400 and just roundified it. And obviously in 07, GM went back to the square styling like the 90s had. So obviously it wasn't quite a failure. It sold a lot, but I think the 97 to 03 F-150 is better looking. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about with those trucks is because the 97 to 03 F-150 and the 99 to 07 Silverados, I think, are the biggest competitors, because it's the trucks that I have the most experience with, because when I was a kid, that's what was used and out, and the GMs were still being made new. Ford had moved on to the 11th gen, but when I was a kid, that's what I rode around and had the most experience with. In my opinion, the interior of the Ford is just better. Not necessarily in design, but in quality. I have seen a lot less Ford seats ripped and steering wheels messed up than GM's. I've touched some GM steering wheels that are so bad they cut you. Same with the seats, actually. The seats just lose the bolstering, they rip. Not saying Fords are the best, but I think they're better. The doors are more solid, the panels are more solid, there's less panel gaps. The steering wheel is nicer feeling. The controls don't feel as chintzy and cheap. They don't move around as much. I think Ford did a much, much better layout interior-wise than GM did with the 99 to 07 trucks. The 99 to 07 kept, in my opinion, the stupid dashboard design, where if you look at it from the driver's side, it's just like, it just protrudes from nothing. It's just nothing, and then boom, dashboard. You get the left side with the four-wheel drive controls and all that, which is fine other than the fact that all of those buttons get pressed in. The steering wheels, which I don't know what GM was doing with steering wheels in the 90s and 2000s. I don't think they can make a good steering wheel to save their lives. Like, the 03, the Cat Eye Silverados, like, what is that? That four-spoke steering wheel. Like, it looks weirdly proportioned. It's too big on the outside and too small on the inside. What else? The center stack in the GMs, I think, looks very odd. It looks very out of place. It's very twisty and weird. The shifter kind of sticks out of nowhere. The Ford, in my opinion, just did a lot better job blending it and kind of making everything work as one. Obviously, I know that the cigarette lighter design with the weird flip-over thing is weird. But I think that in general, Ford took the design element and made it a lot more standard and commonplace, which a lot of people like the GM trucks, which in my opinion, whatever, some of them are good. I just don't like them. I don't like the quality of the interior. I think it's trash compared to what Ford was doing. Not that Fords are the best, because they're not. If you want a good interior, you got to get a German car like a Volkswagen. But compared to the GM, yes, I think that they are much, much, much better. And where I really think that shows was in the 11th Gen F-150, which everybody hates. By the time 0304 rolls around, Chevy had already changed to the Cat Eye, and Ford says, well, you guys are just too late, because we've already got a 21st century truck coming out. And that's what the 11th Gen F-150 was. Dodge, whatever, they were doing their own thing. Ford came out with the 11th Gen F-150, and in my opinion, it made the Cat Eye Silverado look dated as all hell. Ford, basically, they made the trucks more square. They gave them a modern front end, rear end, new engine, which, yes, I will admit it, the 3-valve 5.4 probably was a... No, it wasn't. It was a mistake. They did not do proper testing, and when you don't, you get what they had, which was a large whale turd. Not that all 5.4 3-valves are bad, because you can get high mileage out of them, but if you don't religiously take care of them, they will go boom on you. That said, Ford's 11th gen, which is what I drive, if you get the higher up trim levels, there's a lot of features and design cues that you just don't get in the GM trucks, even if you get a Denali. Ford, with the 11th gen, kept the dashboard in the center stack. They kept everything very flat, very angular. They made sure there weren't weird angles. If you look at the driver's side from the outside of an F-150 from that era, it doesn't look like a weird protrusion out from the firewall like the dashboard of the Cat Eyes do. The steering wheel is normal, square. It has nothing to do. It's bulky. It's easy to grab. Controls like the headlight switch, the door grips, the door handles, they all feel solid. They don't feel like they're going to rip off. Go in a Cat Eye Silverado, lock the door, and then pull that door handle. It feels like you're going to rip the whole door off. Wiggle the door panel back and forth. The whole thing moves. And the radio was a better quality radio. The climate controls felt a lot smoother. They didn't break as often. The seats were a lot more supportive. The doors were easier to open. The handles were better quality. I see a lot more Cat Eye Silverados with broken door handles than I see the Fords of that era. Just saying. The tailgates were heavier. The beds were heavier. They had better quality transmissions. They had better quality drive transfer cases. GM has always had an issue with transmissions. I don't know why. Like with the 4L60. Like, I get that, yes, part of it is owner error, but a good transmission should be able to hold up to abuse for a long time and not fail, and the 4L60 does not do that. Not saying that the Fords were any better, but they had a better transmission. They'll go out, sure, but they're not as frequent as the 4L60. There's a reason the 4L60 is a joke. The drivetrain in that time, yes, GM had a more solid drivetrain. The 5.3, the 6.0, the 4.8. Yes, you would be better off getting one of those than a 5.4. I think that the 4.6 Ford was a much better V8 than all of those. I think that's one of the best V8 engines to ever exist, was the 4.6 modular V8, along with the 5.0. But if you're going to get a bigger engine, the 5.4 3-valve is not a great idea. The Chevys had more room, or not the Chevys, the Fords had more room inside, they had more storage. It's a better truck, in my opinion, for those reasons. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some of the features that Ford and GM use that drive me nuts or that I like. Okay, here is my most glaring example of something that GM has done since 1999. They still do it, and I cannot stand it. And that is the headlight controls. GM, since 1999, has had a headlight switch in all of their vehicles that has an on position, it has a park lamp position, it has an automatic position, and it has an off position. Great, most cars nowadays have that. Well, the difference is that the switch for the headlamps is a momentary switch, and it stays on auto. So if you want to turn your headlights off, you can't turn the switch to off because it's a momentary switch. You have to hold it to the off position, in which they will shut off. It will give you 1,000 messages that your stupid auto lamp system has been disabled, and then it will bounce back to auto so that the next time you start your computerized starter in your truck, the headlights and daytime running lights will come on. GM has had an infatuation for daytime running lights and automatic lights for a long time, and I don't know why. I think daytime running lights are stupid. My Saturn has them. That's something that's unfortunately trickled down from higher up GM into the Saturn. The worst ones were some of the Grand Ams and some of the cars, which I said I wasn't going to talk about, but I do want to bring it up. They didn't even have momentary switches. They just cut the off position altogether. So you can either have your headlights on, or you can have them on auto, which inevitably means on, or you get nothing. That's all you have. What a stupid, stupid design. I don't know who in their right mind said, yeah, we're going to make a momentary switch that's on auto all the time, so if you want to turn your daytime running lights off, you just can't. You have to flick the switch every time you get in the car. Yeah, that'll sell well. Proceeds to do more cocaine. It's the stupidest thing in the world. I, to this day, don't understand why GM uses that. I mean, I know why. They use it because of the idiots who drive around at night with no headlights, so that way, by no switch of their own, they can't, because they'll turn on auto. But it's just the stupidest thing in the world. The stupider part, in my opinion, and this is something that GM still does, or at least did until they switched to LED lights. They did this all the way back on the Impalas till 06, and then they started doing it on the 07 trucks, which was the trucks before 07, the daytime running light was a separate little bulb that would come on in a separate part of the headlight assembly when it was in drive. Fine, whatever. The older trucks used to turn the high beam bulbs on at half brightness. That's what my Saturn does. That's what a lot of their cars did. Fine, whatever, who cares? What the 07 trucks do is they turn the headlamp bulbs on at 80% brightness. So if you get an 07, 08 GM truck, or a car for that matter, their sedan started to do it too, an Impala, whatever, put it in drive, you'll see the lights come on if you shine it on a building or something reflective. Then you flick the headlight switch on and it looks like nothing's changed. Well, that's because the headlamps are already on at 80% of their brightness. And that's why you see so many padiddles that are GM vehicles from that era, because the headlamp goes out because it's on all the time. Why did they do that? I don't know. That's one of the things with GM that I cannot stand, is their stupid headlight system. My truck has automatic headlights, but it also doesn't have a momentary switch. I keep that sucker on off until I want my headlights on, because I don't need a computer telling me when my headlights should be on. I get why they did it, but it's the execution of how they did it, in my opinion, was terrible. Why do we need a momentary switch? It's not a communist truck. We don't need a communist switch telling us to stay on auto. That is one of the most glaring things I can think of. Okay, the second one is stuff like general just fit and finish. Look at the locks on a Ford truck and then a GM truck. And at this point, we could go into, I don't know if I'd go into 07, but definitely the cat eyes. Lock those and unlock them, and then lock and unlock a Ford, and listen to the difference in the locking sound. It sounds like a piece of plastic moving versus a pile of rocks falling into a well. I don't know why they made them so cheap, but they did. And that's nothing compared to stuff like the window switches. Now, yes, Ford has made cheap window switches, but feel the window switches in a cat eye 99 to 07 GM truck, whatever. They feel awful. You can break them if you put your finger under and pull hard enough. I've never been able to do that in any other brand of vehicle, including a Ford, because Ford for the longest used the push-button window switches, which are a much better design. But it's just stuff to break. All of the switchgear, all of the buttons, all of the plastics, it's the cheapest of cheap that you can get in those vehicles. Sorry about that, I had to restart my microphone. Anyways, the stupid frickin' momentary headlight switch. That, in my opinion, might be one of the dumbest things to go in any automobile, period. Like I said, the window switches, the switchgear, I don't know why GM's interiors have sucked so bad throughout the years, but they're just awful. And I know I'm going to get people, well, Ford's interiors are terrible too. They're not that bad. That is not even my opinion. At that point, that's just a fact. That GM interiors are just trash. The headliners fall down, everything rubs off. Look at all of the 07 to 13 trucks that have the that have the green on the buttons. That's because they've rubbed off. Not saying Ford doesn't do that, because Ford's steering wheel cruise control buttons have done that in the past. But my gosh, put some level of craftsmanship and design into them. Okay, now we're on to the 07 to 13, which continues the 11th Gen F-150. There's a couple things in these trucks that drive me nuts. Number one, and I think that this is my least favorite thing, and GM still does this, or at least they did up until a few years ago, is every single GM vehicle, I think, has a selection of buttons, either on the dashboard or in the center stack, that include like a check mark, a road map, an arrow, and like a back button or something. It's to go through the driver information system on the gauge cluster. Why do they need so many buttons? My old Ford Explorer, and Ford did this for a while, gave you 3 buttons. Info, setup, reset. That's all it said, that's all you needed, and they were in a very discrete location for the most part. Maybe it's just me being picky, but I think a checkmark button, it just looks stupid. I don't know why they chose to do it like that, but it's weird, and it's not my thing. I don't get that. The other thing, and this is something that's probably really weird to people, well, actually 2 things. Number one is the shifters. Feel a column shifter from either a 99 to 07 truck or an 07 to 13 truck, and then feel the shifter from a 97 to 03 or an 11th gen or 12th gen F-150. There's no comparison. GM shifters are very floppy and shaky, and they move around and they wiggle and they make weird noises and they move with the dashboard. Fords, when you lock them in place, they are locked. They do not move for anything. They're also a lot more discreet. They hide a lot better. I'm talking about column shifters, of course, because Ford did do floor shifters. The other thing that I don't know why this is even something I should be concerned about is the turn signal noises. GM used to use what everybody else used, which was just a basic, little box that made a turn signal noise, like click, 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 whatever. GM, for some reason, in about 2006, switched in most of their cars to this stupid, computerized, 2-pitch, weird, like, clock ticker thing that is computerized, but it's made to sound manual, because GM has a digital turn signal sound at times, but they have this stupid, like, I don't even know how to imitate it. It's the stupidest noise I think I've ever heard in my life. It sounds broken, and I've seen it break. It's just dumb. Why does a turn signal need to even sound like that? It's just the stupidest thing in the world. In terms of ride stuff, whatever, I think they ride similar. I like my Ford ride, but that's that. Ease of access to work on, I will give it to GM that they have historically made vehicles that are usually easier to work on, which I think partly is because they have to be worked on more. But at the same time, like even take an oil filter, for example, I don't think Ford can make a good oil filter location to save their life. Every Ford product that has a good oil filter location placement is from a Mazda engine. Ford, I don't know what their deal is, but they just can't. But that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I think about all of my major talking points about qualities and appeal and all that. I'm not going to edit this. I'm not going to include anything. If you want to get references to stuff that, like, Google, like, GMC Acadia turn signal sound, which that's another subject. I think that the GMC Acadia and the Chevy Traverse may be the worst vehicle produced in the 21st century from its inception up till about 5 years ago when they redesigned them. Worst quality interior, awful engine, awful transmission, awful electrical issues, terrible fuel economy, terrible to work on. I think whoever designed the Chevy Traverse needs to be taken out back. I really, really do. And whoever thought that the 3.6 was a good engine design also needs to be taken out back. But anyway, that's it. I'm going to stop ranting. Just some information to think about. Google the turn signal sound out of an 07 to 13 Silverado or a GMC Acadia, and you'll hear what I mean. There's actually a video somewhere online, I think it's in a Pontiac Torrent, where somebody has a broken turn signal, and it just goes... like a broken digital turn signal. Leave it to GM. But yeah, I'm going to stop talking. If you want to just do some Googling. Google the dashboard stuff, and that's it. I'm sure I'm going to ruffle some feathers with this, but it's my opinion. You may like your Chevy, whatever. That's your issue, your fault, your problem, whatever. You can like your Chevy. It's a free country, but I'm going to stick with my Fords for the foreseeable future. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and everything else in between, and Isaac24.com. Peace.